Are the Sixers wings good enough? Are they good enough? We talk about Paul George, Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, and the depth at the wing spot. We also speak about some of the other wing depth and how good things are with not just the Eastern Conference, but the Western Conference. We spoke about yesterday OKC, how good they are with their wings from defensively specifically. Alex Caruso now teaming up with Lou Dort. But that also takes some of the pressure away from Jalen Williams having to step down defensively just a little bit because who he's going to be out there on the floor with. So he doesn't have to really get that one guy, except for when you're worried about the switching and they're hunting certain players. But the wing depth overall, Kyle, when we look at these teams and look at where the Sixers are, expanding past the three starters that we've been at least putting in the starting lineup of George, Martin, and Oubre, how good do you feel about the wing depth overall with this basketball team once we get to the bench and looking at everyone else?
I feel about as good as you probably could, right? Like, we're believers in Ricky and hoping that he can develop. I would say my main point of concern, and I was talking with a couple of guys who cover the Cavs yesterday, and we were working out some season preview stuff, how the Sixers stack up, all these things. And one thing that dawned on me as I was having the conversation with them, and that I do think is a little bit of a concern going into the year, while the Sixers have the guys to guard the big wings, I do think there's a potential hole in the spot that I think DeAnthony Melton used to occupy, where the guys who can guard ones, but primarily like two guards and the smaller, quicker wings, I don't know that they necessarily have a lot of depth there, right? Like, I think probably Kelly could masquerade as that guy, but I do think he's better served on more of the true wings. And so if you're up against, a team like Cleveland, you're playing a Donovan Mitchell type guy, I think they might have some real problems against those types of players.
And Darius Garland.
Yes. And look, I think in that instance, I think Garland and Maxey are just going to probably take turns going at each other. But you don't really have good options for those. It's the bigger guards and the smaller wings who are beating you more with speed and shiftiness and agility. So I have a little bit of concern there. Now, the good thing, it's two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, you have a bunch of guys who are switchable, versatile defenders that you're not really going to ask one of them to be, you're the lockdown guy. You're the Tony Allen of this team. If you just saw he's getting his number retired in Memphis for he was an unbelievable lockdown one-on-one defender. They don't have that guy. So it's good in the sense that you're never relying on one person. On the other hand, I don't know that you look at any of those guys and say, we need to put out a fire. We're putting you on that guy right now. And that's something that it doesn't really matter in the regular season. But in a 7-game series where, let's say you play Boston, and I know people are a little bit down on Jason Tatum right now, but let's just say Jason Tatum gets on a heater.
Not down on Jason Tatum. Did you see the recent quotes
about Jordan?
Yes, I was going to leave that alone. But if Jason Tatum, or if it's Jaylen Brown, whoever it is, if one of those guys gets going, I don't think you have there's no fire extinguisher there, right? You just kind of have to ride it out and hope that one of these guys gets the job done. So that would be my concern. But I would say if you look at the roster and you say, we have 3 legit top 20, top 25 guys on this team, plus a couple of legitimate starter wings and an upside guy in Ricky Council and some other depth, you really can't make many complaints about this team going into the season.
What do you think? You think, especially when we look at New York is mentioned, OKC with the wings that they have, and maybe you can keep going on down the line. Sixers had 3 pretty good starters, and if Ricky does turn into something, then they might be in a really good spot.
Yeah, if we're talking specifically about matching up defensively, because they obviously don't have...
and that's really what it is,
Because they obviously don't have the two-way talent of Boston when they have 2 guys that they can throw out there. But in terms of matching up, I agree with Kyle that my biggest concern are the bigger guards. This is one area where there's a lot of people sort of banking on the fact that Kelly shot 37% from 3 with Embiid on the floor and limited sample size last year. That might be a swing stat to watch this season, a swing skill for Kelly to develop, because if he can stay on the floor and spread the floor around Embiid and be able to play 35, 40 minutes where I'm not nervous about his decision-making or his lack of shooting, he can transform this team defensively. Part of the reason he's such a key is they just don't have any other viable options behind him to really defend those quicker guards. So I think, that's a concern that I share. It's one that we've brought up quite a bit here over the last couple of weeks. It's really outside of your trust in their star players delivering in key moments and injuries. It's probably the biggest concern you have on this squad.
Now, when you mentioned DeAnthony Melton, though, one of the things that we would discuss, and I know it was a big point of concern for you guys, was he's a good defender, but the point of attack stuff, he may be a little bit overrated when it comes to that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
It's tough to balance, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of it
because we're not talking about
was-
Herb Jones and
It's tough to balance where DeAnthony off ball was very good, right? Like reads the game well, can create turnovers, do all that. I think it just at times he fell into, well, he's not quite big enough against those Tatum type guys of the world, right? Like the true wings. But the small, shifty guys, he also could have some trouble with. So it was a kind of a niche where I thought he was best for the on-ball stuff. But it is a real, there are some high-level guys in that mold. And DeAnthony was at least a productive and helpful part of stopping them. So, again, they're in a much better place now than they were last year. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they lost DeAnthony Melton, who didn't play most of last year. Like, the sky is not falling, certainly. I just think if you look at some specific matchups down the road, there are holes to exploit. I think at the end of the day, though, the reason why you would retain confidence is that those teams tend to be light in the front court, right? If you're a heavy backcourt or a heavy wing team, there are not many of those teams that have guys who can stop Joel Embiid or even slow down Joel Embiid. And frankly, there aren't a lot of teams that are loaded up there that are going to be able to also slow down both of or even one of Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. So you look at it through we on this show cover the Sixers. So everything is through the prism of, okay, where are their holes? Where are their weaknesses? If you flip it around and you say, like the Knicks, we talked about the Knicks a lot this summer. The Knicks have all this depth on the wing. They have probably 9 to 10 like legit playable guys. Their only real center is out for 2.5 months. Like that's a big problem. And they're trying to reintroduce Julius Randle. Like those are huge concerns that they have to sort through and deal with. And in matchups against a team like the Sixers with Joel Embiid, huge problem. If they were fortunate enough to get to the finals, if Mitchell Robinson's all you got against Jokic, like he can do a decent job. But the second that he hits the bench, Jokic is putting Jericho Sims and Precious Achiuwa and all these other guys through the damn stanchion and running up the score. So every team, with the exception of Boston, who really has been able to reach a place where they have their cake and they're eating it too, you're compromising for whatever your vision is. If you got the two big wings, probably small in the backcourt, probably small in the front court. It's just, that's the nature of a salary cap league. I'm really excited to see these guys starting next week. It's still like, it has not really dawned on me quite yet. In, 4 days?
Yeah.
Is media day. And then 5 days from now, it'll be practice number 1, baby. New look Sixers.
Should be a good time. And the beauty of it too, with it, even though we're nitpicking here, is the good part of it, even though there is no DeAnthony Melton to lean on like that. Yeah, but once you switch from Paul George, you then switch to Kelly Oubre, who then switches to Caleb Martin. You at least feel good about, you can't just hunt that guy. The one that they're really hunting is Tyrese Maxey, and they're going to try to fight over those screens to make sure that he's not caught in that spot.
But to me, I think that's number one trade candidate in-season trade candidate watch.
Defense.
Even more than, like, I know a lot of people get caught up in the power forward spot. To me, it's big guard who can handle the ball a little bit and shoot is number one.
We all silly like the mayor.